Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You are on the sidelines with the sideline guys for another NFL edition of the show. And of course, I'm being joined by the draft guru himself, a man that might find himself on an NFL coaching staff one of these days. My guy, Cole. The wisdom flows from this man. How are you feeling today, bro?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How you feeling? How you feeling?
I'm doing good. Got to big up my guy right off the top, right? Get your head gassed up a little early because I'm putting you through the ringer here. We got a full packed division here out of the AFC that we get to do a full breakdown on that I'm really excited for. But before we jump into that, why don't you remind the people where they could find you, Cole?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the_real_J Cole.
Yes, sir. Follow the man. You can find me at Negron MMA on Twitter as well as TikTok. You could also catch me at Chris Negron _ on Instagram so you never miss any of the dope stuff I'm posting. But make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube so you never miss all of the dope stuff we've got coming your way. Got at least 2 episodes this week of just draft coverage. And then, of course, we got another MMA show coming this week, too. So make sure you're locked in and you never miss any of the dope stuff we got coming your way. But with all the pleasantries out the way, I just got to remind you one more time to support the brands, to support your boys. Why don't you make sure that you follow and support the sponsor of this week's podcast, Shroom Bar, which is a protein bar made up not of psychedelics, but for powerful mushroom adaptogens. It's got lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, and turkey tail to give you all the energy you need in an awesome little package, 12 grams of protein to give you the boost right after your workout so you can continue carrying on through your day. Make sure you use code OTS at checkout at eatshroombar.com to get 30% off of your order. And make sure that you can, like I said, continue to support the brands that support your boys. But with all the beautiful linguistics out of the way, we get to start in the only side of this division that matters, the side of the division that's on the up and come. We got the AFC West, and we're starting out with the Denver Broncos. Let's take a look at their draft and see how things shook out. With the first overall pick of their draft, 20th selection, they got Jade Barron. Now, this is a corner that was very high on our list. I think it was 2 on yours, 3 on mine. Why do you love Jade Barron so much?
The main thing is that he's got the dog in him. I'm just saying straight up. He's got the dog in him. The amount of ability to read a quarterback that he has, the feel for spacing with the receivers running routes, whether it's short, intermediate, and he can run with the long ball too, running a sub 4.4, right? So the main thing that kind of stands out on tape, though, is his ability to break up passes. The after catch that you want to talk about on these receivers, the strong hands. He always plays late hands and those contested balls, and so it allows him to, well, not even that. That's the best tackling corner off the draft board too. So and it goes to probably the best tackling defense. And oh my goodness, you get Pat Surtain, who coming off of fantastic year. That wide open second spot that they were never sure who they were going to have, they got the guy.
Mm-hmm. And it ain't wide open no more. He's grabbing that spot by the scruff of its neck. I love this pick for the same reasons. I love the player, and I think he's going to be high impact. Now, I love the pick and player for the fit. I don't like the pick for the value. Now, cornerback in this draft entirely took a dive, obviously with Will Howard being the big name that dropped out of the big area. We get to talk about him a little later. But I think it's important to analyze, right, and look at all of this and say, hey, is there a world where they could have moved back? I remember in the OTS draft, I had them taking Jahad Campbell at this spot, despite, and now hear me out here, despite what many people thought Obviously, Jahad Campbell was available at this position, but what do you think about the potential of, hey, maybe they could have moved back and still gotten a guy at corner and gotten somebody else? What do you like about the fit? Because obviously we talked about the defense, right? I love the bigger picture here, and I love the way he's going to anchor that defense. But at pick 20, Cole, was it worth it?
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe for the fact that filling that spot for them where it's not a positional need because they're so deep on the defensive side of the ball, outside of interior defensive line, they really don't need anybody on defense as a dire uh, help into the team. I like it, you like it, but you talk about maybe trading back. They wouldn't have gotten him, in my opinion. I don't know when he would have went or how far he would have fell. I know we talked about Omarion Hampton, right? Uh, but we obviously, you were like, he's right there, and you shook things up, took Jahad Campbell for them in the mock. But at the same time, I mean, they need the running back. They didn't take it here. Uh, so as a positional need in the green paper on what pops up in position needs, it doesn't look pretty in the bigger picture. I think this is what we kind of get at every time is it's like you look at the bigger picture, we see the vision that they have, and so we got to give them brownie points for it, but then we also got to deduct points because it's not on popping that paper what you need right here, right now. I still think it's a right here, right now. It's just it's not shown as their top 5 positional needs. I definitely say corner would probably 6 just because they don't have a number 2. I think you gotta put that unmute on. There you go. There you go.
I love
Oh,
it because I
I
was I was
saved you by
hyped.
the way
I
too.
came in
It's
hot.
it's Will Johnson, not Will Howard, but I got you. Don't worry. I saw what you were saying.
Thank you, man. I'm glad you see the vision because clearly it's getting to be that time of night here, but it's okay. We're going to move on. We're going to trudge through the sludge, so to speak. Their second round pick at pick 60 is one RJ Harvey. Now, if you ask me in the dynasty side of things, he was the biggest mover after draft night as far as going up people's draft boards and saying, hey, this guy's going to have a role, so I need to have him on my team. Now, as far as the fit, right? I love the fit here. And I think obviously you could say a lot about what it means to be the Sean Payton offense, especially at the running back position. But I think they reached here on getting RJ Harvey. I think they could have gotten him a little bit later or potentially even had gotten somebody else, but also once again do the damn thing here. I think ultimately though this running back core is so deep that they could have went a couple different ways and got a serviceable player. What really makes this fascinating to me though is how much of a committee are we going to have in this backfield? It seems to be that hey, he should be able to just run in here and grab this role and be the top bell cow running back. But the question is, in Sean Payton's offense, it means something I think to have these reps already, right? And I think people might be overstating just how much RJ Harvey becomes this bell cow back for the Broncos. But I think either way, I like the fit. I think RJ Harvey has been a honorable mention for us, and obviously second round draft capital in the 60s. I think perfect fit, good player, and obviously boosts his stock up just because of where he's going to be and how excited it's made everybody. So Cole, are we right for getting hyped up about where RJ Harvey landed?
I'm gonna say I like him, and like you're saying, there's the running back class was so deep, but there may be, like I said, a fly on the wall. They might have had him higher up after a Genty and a Hampton compared to even Henderson and Judkins and Caleb Johnson. Like maybe they had him as their number 3, and so they were like, "Well, he's here now. We're gonna take him." I'm not sure. Just know that he's patient with following his blocks, and then he was the 4th fastest 40, so we know he's got the burner speed, and then his pass catching ability is so good. That's what kind of gives me, of course, it's Sean Payton. So he kind of gives me a little bit of Kamara vibes, early Kamara vibes. So there's a chance that he can kind of slide into that role, maybe more pass catching and letting everybody else do all the dirty work and then let him go. I'll pop all these outside runs and things like that. But he'll find himself in the mix. And I think that it was a position of need. Like we talked about, they could have gotten a Marion Hampton, who, in my opinion, well, I mean, we'll talk about. But in my opinion, I think that he's going to have the best rookie season out of the running backs, even more than Genty. if you want to talk about just the very first season, I think he'll have a better rookie season. But RJ Harvey will find himself in the backfield and making plays.
Yes, sir. Speaking of making plays, we move on to that third round pick at number 74. They get Pat Bryant, the wide receiver out of Illinois. How do you like the player? Because I know I love him, Cole. I love him.
He's not as big body as you would think. He's not very fast on the combine, but that's not really what he's known for. On tape, ball speed is fast. Combine, he looks slow. I think he ran a 4.61. That's when we were talking about there are some quarterbacks that ran like Jalen Milroe, ran faster than most of the receivers. And just his ability to break off of tackles is really good. I mean, 6'2", 205. So, I mean, he's not like huge, but for some reason, he's still got the burner speed, and he was third in receiving yards per game, third in receiving touchdowns. Or I guess he was tied for third, excuse me. And then that was in the entire Big Ten. And you know that they had a lot of good receivers this past season, especially with that freshman at Ohio State. Just the main thing is that anything over the shoulder, that's what he's really known for. Like, he's good at back shoulder. So to get the quarterback, get him a good back shoulder throw. But that's always tough for the corners too. So let's not get into that sometimes. But if it's in position, he's trying to make the catch, and he does a really good job of getting his arms outstretched into an area so it's easier for the quarterback to make the throw. So that's the main thing about him that I like.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that jumps out on paper is Sean Payton likening this man to Michael Thomas. And I think obviously that's a big praise, right? But I think what really sticks out as far as that comparison is the catch point. And I think he also, despite having really strong being able to high point the ball really in a really strong way, I think this guy also is really a top tier route runner. And I think in today's NFL, that's not given the respect it deserves. I think a lot of the players that don't get the big flashy eyes as far as what they can produce tend to be these route runners, and they tend to produce. I'm looking at you, Puka Nacua. So I think Pat Bryant could be an interesting steal here, but it also puts us in the weird same Sean Payton purgatory position for these wide receivers as we've been in the last couple of years, right? We've got these dart throws on guys like Troy Franklin, on guys like Marvin Mims Jr. And obviously these are different roles for you, but curious to see who's going to come out here and grab some meaningful receptions out of this group. I think Evan Ingram right now seems to be the second option on paper, if you ask me. Who's going to step up? Why not give us another option and who could be that guy? I like the pick here.
I would say you also got to remind that Cortland Sutton is 30 now, so it's starting to get to that point where I didn't even realize how long he'd actually been in the league. I guess it's just because he's an App State guy, and I have to disclose them because being Georgia Southern blood, we don't like them. But other than that, I think that he's gonna be able to take over that role as long as they get him going in the first year or two.
Yes, sir. Early and often, but they haven't been able to do the early part with any of these older receivers they drafted. Well, so we shall see. We move on to their third round pick, fourth selection in this draft. We got Savion Jones, the defensive end out of LSU. Now, this is a 6'5", 280-pound prospect. I love the size on this guy, and being able to roll the dice this late in the draft on Savion Jones is a great spot, if you ask me. How do you like the player?
I would say the main thing is his motor is nonstop. Now, of course, he couldn't do anything to my Bama boys, but that's besides the point. He was able to make plays at the times that they needed it. But his motor is nonstop, like especially in pass rushing. If his first move is not working and then he tries to counter move and it's not working, he doesn't gear down. He really gears up and finds a way to just raw effort to get himself to pressure that pocket. And so that's the one thing, because he's got really long, like he might be 6'5", 280. So he's not as heavy because he's an edge guy versus interior. His arm length is ridiculous. I'm talking about like basketball player. Like he's like definitely like a small forward build. I don't know what the exact measurements would be, probably like 6'7", 6'8" height wise, but in his arm length. So he's able to, and I mean, he was an interior pass rusher at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's a little undersized. So if they put weight on him, I really can see him actually causing problems and chaos if they manage to do that. Because really their need is not edge. at Denver, their issue right now is in the interior defensive line. That's really the only spot that they have a great glaring area on the defense.
I love that you point that out too, because I think he's going to be a quality player for them, but I don't think he's going to be a starter. I think he's going to be a juice guy, right? To come in and add a little bit, especially in the later down scenarios. But
I
we
think the
move on.
starter is going to be the next guy.
Ooh, I love it. We go Quay Robinson.
Q, it's Q, it's
Q.
Q.
Sorry,
I
sorry.
got
I
you. I
always
got
go
you.
Quay. I always go Quay. Round 4, 134th pick, outside linebacker out of Alabama. Tell me why you love him, Cole.
I mean, obviously he's my Tide, but the other thing too is he was very underused. I say underused. I was very proud of the way the defense played. I'm not going to go into the whole tangent with the new coaching staff and the defensive philosophy that I was very proud of, but there were just so many more players making plays because of the chaos that he was using and the chaos that he just bodies falling left and right. Double teams meant nothing. It didn't matter. He might be listed as an edge. Bama slid him in at a 3 technique from time to time. And he's definitely on the way lighter side. But he's just a stand-up guy. And if he really has to get his hand in the dirt because he's so quick at his size, that it's not going to be an issue. And he'll at his size, he'll still play special teams. Just watch. He might even block a field goal or two.
Hey, speaking of special teams, we got in their 6th pick,
You like the
Jeremy
segue? You like the
Crawshaw,
segue?
pick 216. I gotta say, man, what's been the biggest revelation to me is I need to start watching punter film, right? Because I'm not prepared to have a discussion about this man, Cole. Are you?
I am. And the reason why is guess where this man's from? He's from Australia. If you want to look at punter film, go watch rugby, go watch people that are born in Australia and come to America. Because if you look at a lot of these punters, they are not just a straight up punter. Some of them kick with both legs. Some of them can rugby punt where it's able to be low and bounce. It's really inconsistent for punt returners. They're able to cross punt it. Some people call it, there's different terms, but cross punt is you're able to like half spin like you're doing at rugby, and you're able to kick it to the edge that you're running to and make it spin back in. So it looks like it's about to bounce out of bounds. It'll come back in. Or you have ones where it looks like it's a shank where you're rolling right and you kick it left, but the whole entire punt return team is moving left. And then that bounce ends up bouncing back to the right. There's a lot. There's a whole different game of football if you're looking at just kicking. Like kicking a field goal, kicking an extra point, it takes accuracy, it takes rhythm, it takes habits, it takes a pattern that you want. It reminds me a lot of like golf or any kind of sport where you're by yourself and you have everything is really up in here. Now you have obviously people blocking for you and things like that. And then punt, it's the same thing. You can get stuff blocked, but the snap to hold and then to the kick is a whole different level of game that people don't even realize happens.
I love it. And given the physicality of the rugby game, translates over real well. So excited for that little nugget. Definitely gives you something to look for when you're watching these games. We move on to round 7, 241st overall. We got Caleb Lohner, the tight end out of Utah. Now, 6'6". I think this guy is a project, right? I think ultimately he can ultimately grow into a tight end at the NFL level. Someone that is known for being a basketball player in college as well, played 2 seasons there. So I think it's important to use that athleticism, right? Someone that can block out for you and shown that. So why not work on that? I think this is a upside play, but I think this is someone that could potentially pan out in that tight end position. How you feeling?
I say I agree. It's a position of need and it's a 7th round pick. Might as well find a project of something that's going to have a huge upside, right? Basketball player, like you said. So he's going to be physical enough to block out, especially at his size. And then red zone matchup problem, right? 6'7". And the other thing is he only played 1 season for Utah, and on top of that, he ran really well at the pro day for them. So it just shows that there is a huge upside. It's a project. They're taking on the project. And on top of it, it is a position of need. So if it pays off, it'll pay off big.
Great shouts. We move on to the only time that matters. It's time to turn in our grades. And now this one's tough for me because they weren't working with a lot, right? And I think consider what they were working with kind of bumped up the grade for me because I think ultimately you could nitpick things here or there, but they really did squeeze this as dry as you possibly can, given what they had. Now, all that being said, I still think this isn't a home run draft. I think you got some really good players considering what you already want to do, which is the smartest thing you could do positionally, right? Put your team in a place to succeed where you're already good. But a lot of questions on, you know, we needed to be better here. And did we solve that? I'm not sure. Obviously, RJ Harvey needs, at this draft capital, needs to be able to produce as that bell cow back. And that's my biggest question. I think that's what's going to ultimately be the biggest asterisk on this grade in the future. I say all this to say I'm giving them a solid B minus. What do you think?
That's crazy. I got a B minus for them as well. I was bored. I was on teeter tottering C plus to B minus, but even though Jade Barron is not a position of true need for them, it is such a solid pick for me that I think that that's what curves it up to B minus. If they would have gotten an Omarion Hampton and then got a later corner, I don't know if it really changes at that point, in my opinion, if it goes up or goes down. So I think staying at a B minus is kind of where I stand. They still need a backup center. They still have a little bit of interior offensive line issues. And then the interior defensive line, like I talked about, they might make both of these edge rushers eat a little more food, put a little weight on them, specifically probably Savion Jones more than Q. But I think that they've got a vision and their defense is still going to be great. But the interior defensive line needs to be addressed, especially with this division. When you got Pacheco, you got Jim Harbaugh's running style with the Chargers, and then you've got Genty now with the Raiders. So,
Yep. And don't forget about Omarion Hampton, the guy you passed on to make this all work. So we shall see if that comes back to bite you big time. But we close the book on Denver to look forward to Kansas City, to look forward to the team that was the runner up in the Super Bowl this last season. So obviously, a very glaring positional need. And I think obviously we tried to address that as early as we could and often. With the first rounder at pick 31, we go Josh Simmons after making the trade with the Eagles, ultimately finding themselves in a really good spot. I think Josh Simmons is somebody that if he was not injured, maybe would have been a top 5 pick in this draft. I think all things considered, he was on that trajectory. And I think having a swing at that player this late in round 1 is a great place to be. So I like this pick. How do you feel?
yeah, I do too. And I mean, the injury being a patellar tendon versus maybe something that's even more extreme makes it where it's not as glaring. But I definitely see that Kansas City needs that the most, in my opinion. They might have 5 positional needs shown on these boards, and it has offensive tackle sitting at the 5th one. To me, that's their number 1 position of need, especially showing in the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we talk about is the offensive line is what every team needs. And it's just about when you get the guy that you need. And I feel like the bang for their buck at this point, he was 4 on your board. He was an honorable mention for me. And I'm pretty sure he was 4 on your board. So good shout for you to get that in there and him being a first round pick when I decided to hold him a little lower. But also this offensive line class was just so good. So
Yeah,
I like
I
the pick a
agree.
lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that make me like him, but I also think the biggest one for me is like he's in a good position to start. Obviously, they signed Jalen Moore, but I think that's like no matter what, he's going to start at tackle. Whether it's going to be left or right, I think time will tell how well he's adapting to the NFL. I think obviously you want to draft someone this high to play left tackle, but I think where he starts at the season is going to really tell us a lot about how his camp went, in my opinion. In my opinion, but time will tell. We move on to their second rounder. They got pick 63, Omar Norman Lott, the D tackle out of Tennessee. Now, they definitely needed to replenish the middle of their defensive line specifically, right? We got Chris Jones obviously doing what he needs to do always, but he's 31 years old now. We got a lot to figure out still on that side. Now, I think he's going to be in a position where he's going to be able to play early. Now, the question is he a player that can make a difference for them, Cole?
I'm not too sure if that will be. This is probably the first time I feel like I've tried to be as positive as much. And it's not because he's Tennessee. I promise that's not the reason why. For all the people that think, oh, you just being a Bama guy, you're still salty. No, that's not it. He caused issues for us when we played him, but he's very undersized to be an interior guy, 6'2", 291. Depending on how they use him in the system, he definitely can't replace what Chris Jones does. Not a lot of people can, but if I don't know, maybe they see like an Aaron Donald in him, right? Because he's very explosive, and because of his undersized and being 6'2", he's able to, a lot of those taller offensive linemen, he with ease gets past them and splits gaps. So that's the one thing about it. But all it takes is really one of those bigger guys to get hands on him, and they're able to drive pretty easily on him. So I mean, I think this was a stretch. There were other interior defensive linemen I feel like could have fit them better. But I mean, needless to say, Kansas City produces, and he'll find a way to probably be good for them because they have a great coaching staff.
That's a great shout. They needed interior more than they needed edge. Don't know they got the right guy here, though. I'm not sure. We shall see, especially with this higher capital. But they were in a good spot as far as the picks that they had and where they were, right? A lot of picks inside the top 100.
I'm just saying Darius Alexander was still sitting on the board. That's all I'm saying. And that was my number 2.
Yeah, and that's a great shout. Time will tell if you went high by making him your number 2. We shall see. We move on to their 4th pick in the 3rd round, pick number 85. We've got Noel Williams, the cornerback out of Cal. Now, obviously, they have Trent McDuffie, and they signed Christian Fulton in the offseason to join him in that backfield. Now, the question becomes, can he beat out Jalen Watson to play on the other side of the ball? Now, I think this is somebody who I'm in the same vein as the last pick. I'm not really sure this is the guy I would have went with here. Now, call me crazy. Say what you want.
I feel like it's the same, but then
Yeah.
they also we forgot a guy a little bit before. They're both in the 3rd round. They were 19 picks apart. Was it Ashton Gillette? I think had an edge guy.
Oh,
You're good.
yes.
You're good. You're
I
good.
jumped
I
right
mean,
over
the
that.
reason why I'd say it is the exact same. I feel like Norman Lott, Gillette, and Noel Williams all were like compared to guys that were on the board. And I mean, Kansas City knows things that we don't know. But in my personal board, there were better guys for all 3 of these slots. But I'll let you talk about Gillette and then let you finish with Noel. We'll do a 1-2 tandem with both these picks.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry about that. Good
All
shout.
good.
Good shout. Good shout. But to quickly talk on Gillette, I think obviously their edge depth is very strong. It's going to be hard for him to be a consistent player on that side. I think ultimately, though, like he's going to be, like we talked about in other roles, that juice guy, right? Somebody to come up and give you a change of pace and give you a second game wrecker. I don't think he's going to be a starter necessarily off the top. But I think what makes him so troubling for me, at least, is obviously when the motor's going and he's coming at you down here, everything looks good. But the question is, how long can he keep that up? And I think a lot of the inconsistency on film is what has me a little lower on him. Now, it sounds like we're just picking on the Chiefs here, Cole.
No, I just think that in our opinion on the board, I promise that's not what it is, and it's not where they're coming from. I mean, one of the players we had, he played at Louisville before he transferred out, so he knows this guy. But my main thing is I think all negativity aside, if they're going to use him the way we both think they will, he's going to pan out. He's going to be a come in on 3rd down and long, come in on 2nd and 7, 8, something like that. And like you said, be that juice guy for 1 to 2 plays, cause havoc, and then come out of the game and then come back in and do the same thing later. So for me, I like this pick more than I like the Norman Lott pick, just because I see that it's very obvious they're going to end up using him as a third down and long kind of guy. But let's roll into Noel Williams. You were already talking about the guy, and I actually have more upside on him, even though there were some other corners I think that were available. I'll talk about that in a second, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but basically to finish off what I had to say about Noel, I just think he's in a good spot to get playing time. The question is whether or not long term he could be a consistent game stopper. I think that's the real issue. I think he does a good job of tracking the ball and the receiver, but the question is how consistently can we break up these pass attempts and these 50-50 balls? That's where I kind of take a little issue with Noel. But go ahead.
Yeah, the upside for him, in my opinion, is because he fits the Chiefs' defensive scheme the most. Now, on 3rd downs for the Chiefs, because of the amount of complex blitzes they do, He's not really your man coverage guy. He's really good at snapping his head back at the right time on zones while he's like it's basically like shade man, if that makes sense. I'm being super technical again, but it looks like I'm playing man on you. It's really match coverage is what it is. But it looks like I'm playing man on you. But because of what route you ran, you are my man. Now, if you're out of my match, then you're not my man anymore. But he's able to, because of that, he's able to snap his head and quickly locate where the receiver that becomes his man is. So that's the one thing that the Chiefs do a lot with their corners. Like Snead is a prime example of somebody that does that. So it does show he is a lot like Snead in that sense. It's just, will he pan out and will he get in early for them to make that difference?
Yes, sir. Only time will tell. We move on to their fourth round pick at number 133. They got Jalen Royals to add to that wide receiver room, which already has Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and of course, my guy, Xavier Worthy. Juju Smith Schuster still there too, god damn it. So a
He
lot
made
of
plays
things
in
to
the
figure
Super
out.
Bowl of all things.
Yes, sir. Yes, he did. And I think he also is uniquely equipped to play with Patrick Mahomes. That's a great shout. But I think Royals' impact, if any, as a rookie, might be returning punts and kicks. But I think he can grow into a gadget type player for them, depending on, and this is the key, right? Depending on how reliable he can become in this offense. I think it's hard for wide receivers to stick here. This is another dice roll at the Sky Moore type receiver for this team. Will it work this time? Only time will tell. But I think I like Jalen Royals as a player. I think he is a difference maker as far as if you could scheme him up and put him in a position to succeed, he's gonna go out there and burn some guys. So,
Well, and that's the thing too. When you're talking about burning guys, like he's not the best route runner, and I think he's better than what Sky Moore was coming into the league because he had the fastest 10-yard split. And what people don't know, comparing that to a 40, is that's the first 10 yards in your run, right? So if you're able to run a 10-yard split and he ran it under 1.5, he had a 149 10-yard split. So you're telling me he ran a full 10 yards in less than a second and a half? That's impeccable in the fact that that means a lot. 10-yard spacing, that means you've got to be able to cover him in a different way. Now, the good news is he is not a great route runner, so him breaking in and out is going to allow you to catch back up on that. But his first 10 yards of burst, if he's just going straight through the seams, you might as well just kiss it goodbye. So that's the kind of player that they're getting here. And I mean, like you said, it's a fourth round pick. And this just seemed to be the Jalen draft. I feel like the Texans had 3 Jalens. It's just a bunch of Jalen Milrow. It's just Jalen's everywhere. I'm going to look it up. I want us to do a little early prediction here about what we can probably see. I'm going to say that there are 11 Jalens that got drafted this past year.
I think the key is all the different spelling variations, right? We got J Lons, we got J Lins, we got J Dins, right? That's close enough. So there's a lot of things to consider here, but I love it. We move on to their fifth round pick, number 156, Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker out of Oregon. Now, I personally saw this pick as a let's punt for 2 seasons from now and hope this guy turns into a player for us at this position. We don't need you to start now. We don't need you to do much. And hey, if you're probably going to do anything for us, it's going to be on special teams. But hey, keep growing, keep learning, and maybe one day you could make an impact for us. Am I crazy, Cole?
Well, this is number 5 on your board for linebackers. You got to have some more juice for him, man. Bring the juice. Talk about your man, Jeffrey Bassa. Dude, I love this guy, especially being a 5th round pick. I obviously I had him graded higher as well. Just, he was honorable mentions for me. Main thing is that he doesn't look as fast for them. I'm talking about like, 4.63. That's not what it's about. The consistency and shedding blocks at the linebacker position that he does, and the amount of times that he's able to just stack up bodies that creates lanes for the running back to basically be trapped into him, if that makes sense. It's almost like a mouse trap. He's able to get off the blocks in a way where it looks like the running back's like, oh, my guy's got him, and then nope, now you're tackled immediately because he made you think that he was blocked and he really wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that are going to come out of this. My question is, can we see that potential turn into playing time early on? I'm not sure, which you would argue you would like a little bit more from this Chiefs team. Our final pick, round 7, 228. We got Brashard Smith, the running back out of SMU. Now, I think this is interesting because this reminded me of a very interesting running back that played a big role in this Chiefs system the last couple of years. If there's a role that's missing right now, it's the Jarek McKinnon role. And I like the way Brashard Smith fits
Hey,
into that
Georgia
mold.
Southern, man.
Huh? What was that?
Jarek McKinnon, that's Georgia Southern, baby.
I love how good at that you are because I'm so bad at it that whenever you do it, I'm like, what the hell are you even talking about? But hey, this guy's recall is just that legendary. I think this guy, once again, this running back class is just ridiculous. But I think this guy can end up being a very productive player for this team. I think they're more so than you know how they say you want to build your wide receiver room like a basketball team, right? Where you got all these different archetypes. I think that's what clearly the Chiefs have done, right? They have Isaiah Pacheco, who injury wise needs to show that he's back to that level he once was. There's a big question mark there. Obviously, they have the veteran presence with, please help me out, is Kareem Hunt,
There you
and
go.
then lastly, beyond all this, they have
The
Carson
young buck.
Steele. Yep,
Yeah, young buck.
which love what he brings to the table too. Even though they didn't utilize him as much, especially down the stretch. Um, my question is, does this guy end up sticking here? It's a roll of the dice at round 7. I think he could. How you feel?
I definitely think he could. He took the SMU single season program record in all-purpose yards. So not only running the ball, but also pass catching. So he does both. And that's saying something because there was a man named Eric Dickerson that went to SMU. Now, obviously, they kept up with records a little differently then. We play way more games. But to almost have 2,000 all-purpose yards on the ground and catching the ball from the running back spot says a lot. And then also the test to SMU making it into the playoffs. Should have been Alabama. No, I'm just kidding. For him to do that and basically be that bell cow for them at SMU, it was what you need. So I think that he could stick.
Yes, sir. And speaking of sticking, my biggest gripe with this draft class as I'm looking at it, right, is I'm trying to figure out, you didn't have a lot of positions to fill, but you had a lot of positions of need. Now you got dice rolls at those positions, but you don't have anyone that I think is a solid check plus besides Josh Simmons. I think Josh Simmons is the key highlight of this draft, which brings it up for me. We did it last time, so I can't do it again. I'm going to go a C plus here for the Chiefs. I think obviously they're the best, arguably the second best team in the league last year. So hey, why can't they have a pedestrian draft? It's okay. They have one of the best rosters. No, I needed more feelings of coming away with record-breaking guys at this spot. I think ultimately they feel guys they needed, but I don't feel like they filled the guys that they needed. Go ahead, Cole.
I'm about to say, I think paper popping, it looks good. They filled the 5 positions, quote, of need, but it's not the guys that were best available, in my opinion, at that point. I see what they're wanting to do. So I got to give them a decent grade because they filled the positions of need, at least to make it look pretty. It's just not the right guys, in my opinion. And then on top of that, hot take again. I'm sure, actually, I don't think it's a hot take. They were not the second best team last season. We know what happened in the regular season. I listened to it when you and the Podfather were talking about it. We know how everything shook up. We know what was going on. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but I'll say it. The Chiefs were subpar last season. They easily could have went 9-8. Easily could have went 9-8. They would have made the wild card. But 9-8, they'd have been a danger at the wild card, in my opinion. I think they'd have been more dangerous then because they would have been hungry for it. And so you basically gave them this little cakewalk quote that they would say, or at least a better advantageous position to make it to the Super Bowl when they really shouldn't, including some of the games in the playoff. So I think that they actually needed to fill the roster a little more than what the board says per se at the slot that they were in the draft. But needless to say, long story short, I'm still going to give them a solid B because they filled the positions of need. If they want to pan out, it can move up to a B plus. I don't see it getting any higher than that. If it doesn't pan out, I fall into a C plus with you. But I'm gonna give them a solid B because they still filled positions of need.
So now we move out west in the west, further west to the Los Angeles Chargers.
I'll be there in September.
Hey, you heard the man. Make sure you sunny LA. The first pick, they go Omarion Hampton, the running back out of UNC. Now, obviously, the clear number 2 running back in the class behind Ashton Genty, a clear number 1 in any other RB class. Maybe even actually, I lied. Bijan just also came out. But listen, we're getting spoiled here, ladies and gentlemen. This guy is elite, and I think first round draft capital this early proves that. Do you like the fit with the Bolts?
I love the fit. I feel like they needed this, and we talked about like us picking Colston Loveland falling all the way to them in the mock, and the Bears shaking things up, whatever. I feel like this was even better for them, in my opinion. So hot take here again. I think I said it previously. I think Hampton ends up having a better rookie season than Genty, just because of the position. You don't think so?
No, I love it. That's just a hot take. That's the first time I've heard that out of you.
You got to think it's Harbaugh, man. And there's other running backs in that room. Genty's supposed to be the bell cow, but we'll talk about that when we get to Las Vegas. It's just, to me, Hampton's just, because you've got company, talent by company, that he's going to be the ultimate standout with the group, where Ashton Genty is going to get the Josh Jacobs treatment, I feel like, here early on, if they do not change their ways in Las Vegas, where he's going to be talented. He's going to show you what he is, but you're going to degrade his want to stay in Vegas as his 4 to 5 years ago. But I said first year only. I didn't say career. Just get that on record. But Hampton with the better first year.
I like it because fit is everything, and going to a team later down the board, they got a lot of other things figured out, right? I like this fit. I think he also is just such a great player that it didn't really matter where the fuck he went, right? No matter where he went, he was going to be a producer. So I love this for the Chargers. I think I hate it for J.K. Dobbins because I thought he had such a great role last season, and now he's a free agent on the outside looking in. I think he gets signed somewhere before the season starts.
If he doesn't get hurt, he's comeback player of the year, but they wouldn't have gave it to him just because he's a running back.
Yeah, literally just because he's a running back, but such a good shout. I loved seeing his resurgence last season, and I think he's still such a young player. He's definitely deserving of a shot somewhere. But we move on to their second pick 55. They get Trey Harris in the second round. Now, this is a big body receiver swinging once again in the same role that they drafted Quinshon Johnston in last year. Now, obviously, the year before last year.
Yes.
Crazy.
But TCU product, he likes to catch contested balls and drop wide open ones. My brother's told me multiple times.
I love that you made that shout too, because I was going to say, as far as the difference between the two players, you could almost argue like, hey, like, why didn't you just use that pick somewhere else? Because no hate on on Johnston. I think this is somebody who was the most bust receiver, screaming bust out of that draft class. So it didn't shock me. But I think, once again, teams showing you where they feel guys are. I think them drafting Trey Harris says a lot about Quinton Johnston, whatever the fuck.
Quentin Johnston.
Quentin Johnston. There we go.
Quentin Johnston. I got.
I called him all kind of.
Most people had him as a top 5. He was in my honorable mention, and I definitely see exactly what you're talking about. He could be the bust of the receiving core. I think it's somebody else, but I'm not going to say who yet. We're going to save it for whenever we get to those teams. Because there's 2 of them. That's why I said teams. And he just transferred from Louisiana Tech after being a dog, went to Ole Miss. They didn't pass as much as Lane Kiffin normally does, and he still managed to have 114 catches for basically 2,000 yards.
Yeah. And I think just a completely different role from what you're getting out of Ladd too. So you gotta once again get those guys to fill that room. We move on to the Chargers. Third pick in the NFL draft. They get Jamari Caldwell, the DT out of Oregon. I would argue this was their biggest need next to receiver, right? So you get them right back to back. Me personally, I think having the cupboard being so bare after both of their defensive tackles from last season left, it's like you had to get somebody just so we had someone to put out there, which is not a good position to be playing from as a rookie because we need you to perform like yesterday. And I think obviously with Harbaugh's defensive schemes, you should be in a good spot. I don't like the pressure. Now I think the player is going to live up to that, and I think he's going to certainly be someone that gets pressures. I think last season he got something like 15. So I think he's going to be a game record for them. But the question is, how consistently can he stay on the field?
Yeah, he's going to have to stay on the field. I don't think there's any choice. I feel like he'd be in a better position if he had an additional player in that defensive line group with him, which the next pick kind of rolls into. And that's why I think that it kind of meshes a little better. So raw right now, it doesn't look as good, but he's a fantastic player. And he's actually able to produce more sacks than you would realize at the interior defensive line spot. He was at Houston before he went to Oregon, had 6.5 sacks as an interior guy. Says a lot.
We move on to their fourth pick. We got Kyle Kennard, the edge out of South Carolina. I'm going to just lay out here, Cole, because I know you're ready and chomping at the bit for this one. Why do you like the edge out of Carolina?
Well, first, he was in my honorable mention. I wanted to put him higher. There's just so many good edge rushers, as there always is every year. But his arm length, ridiculous. His burst, ridiculous. The amount of times that he has just any offensive tackle that wants to just press and put all their weight back, he just sets and presses into it. The amount of bole is what we like to call it for bull rush is ridiculous, especially for him to just be only 254 pounds, the amount of strength that he has. And so that's pairing with Caldwell, I think makes this a lot better. So even though interior is what they need, obviously there was another man that went out the door for them at that edge spot. And so it might not show it's in a position of need, but I definitely think it is. And so them paired together, I think this looks a lot better now than if it would have just been in the interior.
Great shout. We move on to one very confusing selection. We go to round 5. Pick 158, we get Keandre Lambert-Smith, the wide receiver out of Auburn. What do you like out of Lambert-Smith?
I'm going to be completely unbiased as possible as an Alabama fan here. The upside to Lambert-Smith is very big, very big. He led Penn State before he transferred to Auburn. Then he led Auburn. Now, of course, Auburn really was not passing the ball worth anything this last season. They were not very good. But he ran a 4.37. And he averaged almost 20 yards a catch. So he's that intermediate to deep guy. He's able to basically, if a quarterback's inaccurate on their throw, he's able to find a way to get to the ball. That's the one thing that he always, manages to do, just put himself in the right position to make the catch, regardless of where the location of the ball is. And just like I said, just burner speed, intermediate to over the top stuff. Not really going to be your underneath guy. You might be able to get some screens and stuff, but I'm going to be as positive as possible, but I'm going to be unbiased just because he's got that AU on it. It's just so ugly.
I love the brutal honesty here. I think if anyone's going to be the guy out of this wide receiver groups that they picked up, I think it's going to be Trey Harris. I don't think it's going to be Keandre, but always good to have a little change of pace, as we always talk about here. So we move on to the next pick. We got Oronde Gadsden going at pick 165, round number 5, the tight end out of Syracuse.
Another Syracuse player. I got to stop eating my words.
Yeah, multiple we got. But I don't know. I think personally, in other years, Gadsden might have been in a different position as far as the tight end queue here. I think he's a little further down because of this year specifically. I'm interested to see because ultimately they want vertical passing threats. And I think he's definitely can develop into one of those guys. The question is, especially in Harbaugh's offense, can he keep himself on the field? That's the question.
And that's the biggest thing for me because he gives me Vernon Davis vibes, right? He's more of a pass catching tight end. He's not going to come in and block. And now whether Harbaugh tries to make him, I mean, he's got good size on him. So it's just also Syracuse. They're passing the ball like crazy with Kyle McCord and the weapons that maybe not that he had, but he has produced and then allowed these guys. Because if you notice, all these Syracuse guys are offensive players. So maybe it's just a shout to a testament of what they did. But I think that being that like more Vernon Davis style allows him, and maybe a different setting, right? Harbaugh, we know what he wants to do, but at the same time, give Herbert that stretch tight end that you need to cut through the seams.
You heard the man. Give Herbert what he needs. We move on to the 6th round pick 214. They got RJ Mickens, the safety out of Clemson. Now, listen, you got to have DBs, right? No matter what, you got to have DBs. This is the depth piece. But I think with Derwin James at the nickel, right? Why not slot this guy in as safety a couple plays and see if he can stick? I think I like this pick in a sneaky way just because I think, although not very heralded, not the biggest known safety in this group, I think he's someone that could potentially grow into a starter for this team. How do you feel?
I feel pretty good. I'm going to let you know we missed another pick again. Let's talk about my boy Branson Taylor real quick. Hey, I'll even start with Branson Taylor. Big upside, big body, offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. The main thing for him, he likes to do the hand mirroring that a lot of tackles people see, and he's very good at it. But the only bad side about that is he wastes a lot of motion when he does that. So it takes a lot. It looks like a lot of hand fighting. Um, they definitely needed to just add a little more to their offensive line. I really think they need guards more than they need tackles. They need interior guys, but he's a tackle that's better in the run game than the pass game, and that makes sense in kind of the direction it looks like they want to go.
Yeah, and I love that you stole my thunder on that one too, because I was going to say the same thing. He's played tackle his whole career, but they look at all their linemen as if they're interchangeable. I'm pretty sure they're going to move them to the inside, like you said. But we move on. RJ Mickens, any thoughts before we cap off the Chargers here?
Oh, I love RJ Mickens. I think they got one more pick as well. They
Yeah,
doubled
yeah,
down
we
on
got one more.
safeties.
Yeah.
Yeah, so RJ Mickens, the main thing I like about him is very good at reading the eyes of the quarterback. And, if you coaching guys at the high school level, you really teach them the opposite. Unless you find a center fielder that's got the speed, you can't tell them to read the eyes of the quarterback. Now, in college and NFL, you got to be able to, especially, but there's so many fakes, no looks, double moves, all this nonsense that happens. And to be able to analyze and understand it is the main thing. And the thing is he hits very hard for someone who weighs under 200 pounds. The other thing, too, is I think he had picked off he had like 7. I mean, it wasn't anything shocking. He had basically 7 picks in his career with Clemson overall, but he didn't really get a lot of starts until the last 2 seasons. And then just his arm length's pretty good for his size, so he breaks up passes pretty well. He can find his way into the mix, like you're saying. Just slide him up there as safety. Let him be a little Derwin James combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're gonna be laying the boom out there in LA, best believe. But we move on to their final pick, round 7, pick 256. They get this is gonna be fun. Trick Wheezy Bridges, the cornerback out of Florida. I think just from the tape I've seen, I think this guy is gonna struggle to make the roster. Am I crazy, Cole?
No, you're not crazy. The main thing about him is he's got very good speed. So as long as he's not getting burnt, but he's not making crazy tackles. Um, he's not analyzing the field like we're talking about, like someone at Mickens all the way as a 6th-round pick. The amount of vision that he has is really good for a 6th-round pick safety. And 7, that's really, we're talking about this looks like a project. Like maybe they're going to try to see if they can get him to maybe put on a little more weight, try to lay the boomstick, try to get him to be able to read or at least analyze. Maybe he's going to be maybe he's a gadget guy. They keep him for just dime packages and man coverage only, and he's a special teams player. I mean, that's the only other thing. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yes, sir. Well, it's only right we round this thing off by giving him a grade. I think ultimately the fact that this team has been in wide receiver hell for what feels like 4 years now brings about some interesting things. I mean, they even brought back Mike Williams, right? So, when you bring back Glass Williams, we're having some problems figuring out the full length of this wide receiver room. I'm going to be real here, man. I think I like this draft a lot more than what a lot of people are saying. I think ultimately they took some big home run swings, and it's really going to depend on whether or not these guys land for them. I'm looking at you, Trey Harris. Um, but I think you can't go wrong with a guy like Omarion Hampton as your number one pick, and then getting some good dice rolls, especially down. I'm a really big fan of the RJ Mickens pick, and I think it pushed it up a little bit for me. So you know what? I'm going to give them a solid B. How do you feel?
I'm going to give them a B plus because I just
Wow.
think Omarion Hampton and I think Trey Harris is not going to end up being that bust. And then just the combo of the defensive line back to back that they ended up getting goes a long way alone in the draft. And then for them to try to get some more depth at the offensive line, and then maybe both of these tandems of safeties at the end is to just see what can they do along with Derwin James in the end, because they need more depth just in case, because you always need depth, especially when you've got these superstar all pro guys. But I'm going to give them a B plus.
I love it. And with that, we move on to our final team out west. We got the Las Vegas. Don't get it wrong. Raiders going with Ashton Genty at 106. Obviously, a little bit of a reach for the running back position over all, right? All things considered. But I think either way, what this team needed glaringly and being able to get the best player at that position, I think is a great poll, no matter how you slice it.
We got that right. I mean, ain't nothing really to say. Coulda, shoulda been the Heisman winner. All the speculations, my Heisman in my heart. Sorry, Travis Hunter. But just love this stadium, by the way, not to go off on a tangent. I've been to Vegas,
Beautiful.
and just this Allegiant Stadium is just so nice. He's going to do what he needs to. I'm just worried about if the organization as itself and the inside does not change things, that they're going to Josh Jacobs, Ashton Genty, to the point where he'll end up going to another team like a lot of these running backs have this past season and flourish, right? So we'll want them to be able to, and it's all about looking at these next picks and seeing how they combo it, because we got a lot of picks to talk about for them.
Yes, sir. Yes, we do. We move on to the second pick 59. They got Jack Besh, the wide receiver out of TCU. Now, I think this one is the pick that's going to stick for them. I think obviously Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker are the second guys that they're trying to beat out here at this position. I think Jack Besh gives Geno Smith something that he doesn't really have right now. And I think that's someone that's going to go out there and be consistent. I think what I like about Jack Besh is he's a consistent player on offense, can tighten up his route running a little bit, but I think ultimately he's going to be a bell cow for them in a way that they haven't really had in the wide receiver room, someone that's going to be very consistent and could get stuff breaking, especially over the middle. I love Jack Besh. How do you feel?
I would say I think this could go either way. I think more positive than negative. This could potentially be the bust that you're claiming Trey Harris could potentially be. But a lot of times I feel like if you see someone get the senior MVP, he got the Senior Bowl MVP. And then on top of that, his ability to catch the ball consistently. And he's not, like you're talking about, needs to work on his route running a little bit. But the one thing he is a lead at already is if a team is in zone, he finds the open spot. Anything, so like any of those, like it looks like I'm running a slant and he's able to just sit right there in between the linebacker and the corner, or the linebacker and the safety, spot on. And that's what he's the best at. So it kind of gives me like just bigger Hunter Renfrow vibes, maybe Lad McConkey vibes. So that's what he looks like he can do, and maybe might be his skin tone too. I can't help it, but just let the man do his thing. But there's a chance that there might be, if he starts to have struggles and where he's good at, and that's finding the zone and being able to catch contested balls, then we're looking at a bust at the second round.
And that's the last thing the Raiders need. So, and it's funny that you mentioned that with their second rounder, because I feel like their third rounder is the closest thing on paper to a bust that they drafted. We got Darian Porter, the cornerback out of Iowa State, obviously a super speedy corner. I think he came in at 4.3 in this combine, one of the fastest times. I think top 5 out of all positions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was the third.
Nice, nice. Okay, you see, I'm the brain's working a little bit here. I think he's a little bit of a project, though. I think he's a gambler, which I personally don't like, but could potentially be a guy, especially with that breakaway. I mean, the ability to have that speed to close the distance. How do you feel about Darian Porter at pick 68? Pick 68.
Okay, well, all right. So here's my thing. I'm higher on him than I think most people would be. And the reason why is he's got the Trayvon Diggs side of things. He's a corner that can catch the ball because he was a former receiver. So his thing that he needs to learn the most right now is his steps, his drops, understanding his coverage and his assignments as a defensive player, because he only had 1 year playing corner. That's it. But prior to that, he was 2 years a receiver. So, because of his knowledge as a former receiver, he's able to read quarterbacks and understand routes better. It's just about the little in and outs of your everyday drills and his stance and his start and getting that muscle memory as a defensive player versus an offensive player. But you're talking about elite passer, pass coverage because of his speed. I would say that it's just he needs to be able to read things better. So he's more of a zone guy, more of a man guy because of that. And he's huge too. He's 6'3".
Great shout. Yep. And when you're that fast at that size, you should be able to figure things out at that end of the ball. We move on to their another third rounder. Pick number 98 via Miami. We got Caleb Rogers, coming out of Texas Tech, the guard. Now, I'm going to be real. I think this was the point of the draft where, hey, it was about time that you guys swung on linemen, especially considering the past of this team specifically when it comes to the players they have spent capital on at that position. It's been very rough. But I think getting someone that has been not only a staple for Texas Tech, but a goddamn rock for this team, 55 consecutive starts for the Red Raiders. I think ultimately, I'm not going to lie, I'm not high on Caleb Rogers as far as like being a top end lineman out of this class. But I think could help the Raiders room, if any.
I would say I think he's going to help by sliding inside. Now, he played out of those 55 games, played 52 at left and right tackle, and only played 3 at guard. But I think that there's a chance that they're going to move him inside. 6'5" is a little big, but that's okay. 312's he's not as heavy set, so he's going to be better at pulling. But there's more time to tell for that. But I have a feeling they're going to move him interior, which would fill that slot that they need at an interior offensive line.
Great shout. We move on to their next pick. Came a pick right after round 3, pick 99. They get Charles Grant out of William and Mary, the tackle. Now, I think obviously the biggest, hey, what's going on here is Colton Miller's contract situation with the Raiders, whether or not he's going to stay here. And I think that makes this pick make even more sense, right? Why not get his understudy to learn in there? So, hey, maybe that contract becomes a little easier to turn down. How do you feel about that, Cole?
He was in my honorable mentions for offensive line. I just think that he's been very consistent. It's just because he went to William and Mary, it's maybe not as apparent obvious, except for people that really dove into his film. But if you look back-to-back picks, back-to-back positions, now I think they're both similar stature and size, but the way they play, Caleb Rogers moves inside, Charles Grant stays outside, but there's a chance that they just let both of them duke it out for that second spot behind Colton Miller, and then potentially just, if they have to part ways or stealing a spot, and then now you've got 3 guys or potentially 2 young guys that both have panned out. So it's really like a hit or miss. So if one of them doesn't pan out, you got the other one. But then the biggest upside is if both of them pan out, looks really good for their offensive line.
Yes, sir. Speaking of both of these guys panning out, how about at fourth round, pick 108, getting Dante Thornton Jr., a guy who quietly, I need to reiterate this, quietly led the nation in average yards per catch at 25, and also catches for 50 plus yards at 5 of them. Um, this guy's a burner, right? It's no other way about it. And I think this guy, once again, getting different archetypes in that wide receiver room. I love what he brings to this team to stretch the floor with Geno.
Here's my main thing. He would have been even more leading in that category if it wasn't for the quarterback throwing him the ball and the whole NIL shenanigans that happened, trying to get more money. Not going to go into all that, but the amount of overthrows I saw, ridiculous. Anyways, but he at 6'5", to move like that, to be able to just track the ball, it's ridiculous. He's got the speed for it, like you're talking about with the average yards per catch, the amount of deep balls, the 50 plus that he had. And then on top of that, guess what? Because you're so scared of that, he'll just plant his foot in the ground and just get an easy 5-yard hitch. And because he's 6'5", if a little corner can't tackle him, he's going to get a first down every time. So that's his game. Burn you short underneath. If they can start working on his intermediate stuff, he's going to end up being a problem. He could potentially do like DeAndre Hopkins type stuff.
High praise from the wide receiver room there. I love it.
And as a Tennessee guy, I just praised.
Yeah,
Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, you got to love it. You got to love the love. We move on to one of the best names in the goddamn draft, if you ask me. Round 4, pick 135 to get Tonka Hemingway, the DT out of South Carolina, second defensive player they took. I think this one is pretty notable just because of the fact that he's in I don't want to say elite, but he's shown a real ability to rush the quarterback.
At the interior spot, for sure.
Yep. Sack numbers aren't necessarily where you'd want them,
but
right?
His pressures are very nice.
I was about to say, but the pressures, and as far as what he does to collapse the pocket in general, I think he's going to be better for them than the round and position of the pick suggests.
Everybody's trying to find their own Aaron Donald. If ever since, whenever you get a big player to do what they do in their career, future Hall of Famer type stuff, you've got these guys that go, let me find an interior defensive lineman that weighs under 300 pounds. That's just a freak athlete. That's like 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", should not even be playing on a football field, but they're such a freak and their motor is so good that I'm able to, he's the best spinner out of interior guys. That's why his pass rush percentage is so high, because not a lot of interior guys can spin like that. Guards and centers don't like to handle spinning. That's something that tackles deal with all the time with defensive ends. But an interior guy spinning on you, they'll be able to run so many stunts with him, and he'll be able to move outside, and there will be no problem because he's not too heavy of a defensive lineman.
I love that you're seeing the value at that pick too, because I thought that was one of their better ones. We move on to round 6, pick 180, JJ Pegues, the DT out of Ole Miss. Now, I think the trenches need to be addressed, and clearly they're continuing to do that. I think he's one of the best D-tackle prospects that was left on the board at this spot as well. Now, the question is, once again, where are we gonna see this guy, right? I think, if I'm not mistaken, he also played a little fullback in college as well. So
he played Wildcat quarterback for Ole Miss too.
Don't get it twisted. I didn't even know that. I don't even know that.
Freak athlete, man. Freak athlete.
Yep. So I think that there's potential here, even if it doesn't end up panning out with a pick this late. Good move, you ask me.
I was going to say, him to fall all the way to the 6th was kind of crazy for me. I had him as like a, mid 4th round, kind of where Tonka Hemingway was. But he's definitely a true defensive tackle. He's just more freakishly athletic. Like Tonka Hemingway gives you like that speed on the inside that you would never expect. And then this guy can go line up, head up on a center, and then go all the way outside to the tackle. It doesn't make a difference to him. And then I wouldn't be surprised. Can you imagine him being the fullback for Ashton Genty? Oh, don't get me started.
Holy, imagine. Hey, Travis Hunter was in this draft too. Why not? Let's mix it up on both sides of the balls here, ladies and gentlemen. Why not? I love that. We move on to our next pick. I didn't get to put all their picks on here, but I have them all written out. So we're going to discuss all of them, regardless of what the graphic says. Our next pick, round 6, 213, Tommy Millette. came out of Montana State as a quarterback. I think ultimately he's going to be a gadget type player, wide receiver for you at the next level. What really stuck out to me though, right? 6,000 passing yards, 3,500 rushing yards. Hey, if Lamar listened, we wouldn't have had Lamar Jackson. So why don't we keep this guy a quarterback? I'm just saying, we got the quarterback room isn't that good over here.
I mean, the putting him at receiver, it's all about, this is the whole idea. He's such a freak athlete that he's going to be able to be, he might be a special teams guy. You don't know. He's just that good of an athlete that, I mean, people forget there was somebody named Julian Edelman. Oh, I think he panned out pretty well at receiver, right? So he gives me those kind of vibes. The other thing too is the amount of trick plays you're able to run out of that because you've got a former quarterback at receiver. There's the list goes on. There's so many receivers that transitioned from quarterback into that spot and panned out very well. There's the ones that didn't as well, but I think the list actually shows that there are more that have, but just because they're like this, but he's too inconsistent as a passer. Just let him be Taysom Hill. He's not as big, but just let him be like Taysom Hill, right? So that's why I just be that gadget guy. And whenever he's in, like, you have to be aware when you're playing the Raiders, whatever jersey number he's wearing, if he's in the game, you've got to be ready for a trick play. You cannot just be, if you're lulled to sleep, yeah, it's easy 6 points on the board.
Yes, sir. So you better make sure you're paying attention. I'm excited to see how they use him because it can be very impactful or nothing. Like literally no in between. So let's see. We move on to the next quarterback they drafted in round 6, 215 overall. They go Cam Miller out of North Dakota State.
Back FCS guys. That's what I'm talking about.
And obviously back-to-back positional needs. Now, I think this is the guy that they're drafting to actually play quarterback. There was some buzz that potentially they could have gotten a quarterback within the first 3 rounds in this draft. I like them rolling the dice here because I'm not going to lie. I think this team is going to be really bad next year too. So why not?
I know that
our
Mr.
quarterback
Shador
next
Sanders and Dion wanted Shador to go here. Obviously, Tom Brady owns 5%. That's not like he has crazy influence over the organization, but 5%. Cam Miller was a stud at the FCS level, 2-time national champion, 45-11 record as a starter. He was their team captain, so at least he's a leader early. The main thing for him, I mean, there's guys that came out of that school that panned out, at least for a little bit of their career, maybe not fully. Carson Wentz, if I remember, went to North Dakota State. The main thing for him is that he's snappy with the ball. Anytime a short intermediate, he's going to zip it out. It's more about being able to read when the plays go off. He's not a off the script guy, and a lot of times that happens in the league. So that's the one thing that they got to get him into.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But the main thing is it's depth for Geno.
Yeah, definitely depth. Now our final pick, round 7, 222. We got Cody Lindenberg, the linebacker out of Minnesota. Obviously, Devin White looks to be the starter out there. But I think no matter what, this is a actual 7th rounder that has a roll of the dice to actually start here. I think no matter what, shout out Devin White. Even if you're a 7th rounder, you should be able to contribute at this spot.
Well, and the other thing too for this, I mean, he's going to be a special teams guy no matter what. That's why I feel like any linebacker that's like 4th round and later, special teams. Safety, linebacker, safety 4th round later, special teams. Any of those defensive guys that are 4th round and later, if they can't find a spot on the field, they will find a spot on special teams on the field. But yeah, he great. If I wanted to like rank all the linebackers, because remember I had a really long list and I didn't talk about everybody. He was like 10th if I would have listed him as an honorable mention. So for me, if you're getting the 10th best linebacker in the whole draft at the beginning of the 7th round, that's a steal. Because more than likely he's going to pan out than he wouldn't.
Yep, especially at that spot. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a great swing at the bat. Now it's time to do the damn thing for the final time in this episode. We've got our grades for the Raiders. This one was really hard for me because I liked a lot of their picks. I also hated a couple of their picks. I ultimately evened it out to give them a solid B minus. Now, the reason why I go B minus is I think they didn't shoot themselves in the foot, which they've shown that they would do in the past, right? So you got to show some respect. You got to show some, hey, you didn't fuck up. But I think you could argue, played it a little bit safe in the middle rounds. How do you feel about these drafts?
I would say I 1000% agree with the back-to-back picks of the offensive linemen, and then the high upsize of Dante Thornton, uh, and then the two interior defensive line that have the ability to move around in that defensive line. Maybe the bottom three is kind of what shakes things up. I mean, they got a little fancy with a former quarterback receiver. Maybe instead of Cam Miller, you get somebody else. But I feel like the 7th round's a steal, and they did a really good job of kind of filling things in. I definitely think that they probably should have went another DB, maybe not corner, but safety. Other than that, so I'm going to give them a solid B.
Now, this is my hot take. We'll move on from this division and we'll move on from this episode after this. But I think this, along with the other team out west, the other division out west, has a chance to be one of the best divisions in football. I think if all things plan out for all these teams, they could be in a really interesting spot. I think the Raiders are the team on the outside looking in of these 4 teams. But don't be surprised if we got a couple of playoff teams out of this West.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3 out of the 4, and then the Raiders are sitting there at 6-11, right? For the worst team to be 6-11, and then the other 3 having playoff berths just says a lot, right? Did they not all 3 get playoff berths last season? I'm pretty sure they did. So that just shows a testament to what's happening there. And you also got to look at this coaching staff, by the way. Now you got Andy Reid, you got Harbaugh, you got now Pete Carroll back. And then you got Sean Payton. Yeah, you didn't realize that to me, out of all divisions, that is the most elite coaching staff, head coach out of all 4. If you want to compare all the other ones, for like no doubt in my mind, at least pedigree wise, that's the best head coaching staff in the division.
Couldn't agree with you more, and I love to see Gino with Pete Carroll again too. So, and the more synergy we have here. But Cole, we did the damn thing again. I think this was special. Shout out to you for showing up for us as you always do. But shout out to the fans for making this special and really making the love felt. I think over the last month with the addition of my guy Cole, I think we've been able to do some really fun stuff here for our draft coverage. So keep showing your support if you love it, and make sure you're following the brand so that you never miss any of the dope stuff we got coming. Now, I thank you as always for staying here with us through thick and thin and staying through this long episode. But I just got to remind you guys all, because sometimes we all get sad, right? Sometimes we all get a little depressed, and it's easy to spiral, right? When you're down there. But no matter how hard it gets, no matter how rough life becomes for you throughout this entire process, just remember, you could be Kermit the Frog getting absolutely danced on by the Philadelphia Eagles. So until next year, ladies and gentlemen, maybe the Chiefs have another shot at it all. Maybe the offensive line of the Chiefs is going to take 4 years to rebuild, but we won't know until next time. So, hey, Pat Mahomes, tighten up them shoes if you want to go back to the Super Bowl. We'll see y'all next season.